Hello, and welcome to the Soul Shaking Love podcast. I'm your host, Coach Valerie Green from CoachValerieGreen.com. And today I'm really excited to interview Michael Arterberry. And he is a master encourager and dynamic motivational speaker. He works with teenagers, young adults, and he is such an incredible inspiration. And we're really going to talk about how to use the adversity that you've gone through as a catalyst to get what you want out of life. And so, Michael, I'm just really excited to have you here. Welcome.
Yes, I'm excited to get this opportunity to speak to you and your audience.
Yes, and I know that I speak a lot about romantic relationships, and I like to talk about that every decision that we make in life, in terms of what has an impact on the world, is done in relationship. Even if you make a decision on your own, it impacts other people. And so the way that you do one thing is the way you do everything. And then, I love to bring people on the show that have a diverse background and that teach everybody how to overcome, your dirt as you speak. So I'll share a little bit about Michael and his background, and then we'll just dive in. And so as a teenager, Michael was fortunate to receive guidance from positive adult role models, and I'll ask him more about that. And he's been then setting high expectations for his future, which I just completely admire, for more than 25 years. He works with teens, he works with adults, and this is his main message, that you can be empowered no matter what. And he received the 2010 USA Network Characters Unite Award for exceptional commitment to combating prejudice and discrimination while increasing tolerance and acceptance within the community. And he's also the recipient of the 2014 100 Men of Color Award for leadership and education, government, mentorship, entrepreneurial success, and community service. And in 2008, he founded the Youth Voices Center, a nonprofit with the mission of helping young people become active, productive members of society by overcoming their obstacles, their history, their stereotypes, and even their own self-image and limiting beliefs. And so I'm just so excited because you work with such a wide variety of people. And so first of all, I'm going to want to ask you, what is your story of overcoming your own adversity that you can use to inspire others?
Okay, so I'm gonna put some meat on the bones with that word dirt. And the way I'm gonna do that for you is I'm gonna tell you a story. All right, Valerie. And it's about a farmer and a donkey. All right. And this donkey is one of his favorite farm animals because once he finishes working with the donkey on the field, he brings the donkey back home and he allows the donkey to play with his kids. So the donkey's more like a work animal / pet. And so envision them coming down the driveway, the kids come out, they wash them, they ride them, and this becomes somewhat of a normal ritual that they do. But one night he brings the donkey home, they play with him, they wash him, they ride him. He releases him back out in the farm. And during the night, while the donkey was wandering around the farm, he fell into an empty water well.
Aww.
So when he fell into the empty water well, he starts making donkey noises. He does it all through the night. The farmer comes out the next morning, calls his name. He doesn't show. He whistles. He doesn't show. So the farmer starts walking around the farm trying to find him. He finally hears him making noise at the bottom of the well. So the farmer walks over to the well and looks down. Of course, he wants to get him out. So he goes and gets 6 of his friends. He brings him over to the well and he's like, hey guys, how are we going to get him out? So one of his friends suggested that they get some rope and they pull him out. So all 6 of them get some rope and they start to lasso the donkey. They throw the rope, they miss. They throw the rope, they miss. They finally throw it by his hind legs. He steps into the rope, they shimmy it up his body and they start to pull. They pull, the donkey moves. They pull, the donkey moves. They pull, the donkey moves. Then halfway up, Valerie, they realize that the donkey's too heavy. So they lower him back to the bottom of the well. And now this farmer has to make a grim decision. Now, see, he can't feed him food at the bottom of the well because that wouldn't make any sense. He really can't starve him because starving him, he's more like his pet. So he's not thinking about starving. So one of his more reasonable friends came and stepped up behind him and said, listen, you don't want your kids to fall into the well. So we're going to have to sacrifice your donkey. We're going to cover him with dirt. The hole will be covered. Your kids will be safe, but your donkey's going to be gone. The farmer thought about it for a moment. He says, you know what? I can deal with that. So they all get shovels and they start shoveling dirt. And every time the dirt hit the donkey would scream. And every time the donkey would scream, it would cause the farmer some distress. So you got dirt, scream, dirt, scream, dirt, scream. Then Valerie, all of a sudden, the scream stopped.
Yeah.
When the scream stopped, they gave the donkey a moment of silence, but they went back to work. More dirt, more dirt, more dirt, more dirt. But then the next thing you know, Valerie, you see the donkey's right here. They're like, whoa. So they start shoveling cartoon style. The next thing you know, you see half his body.
Wow.
They keep shoveling faster and faster. And the next thing you know, Valerie, the donkey walks right out of the well that he fell into. Now check this out. Every time the dirt came across the wall, it would fall on the donkey's back. He would shake it off and he would step on it. And he took every scoop of dirt that was meant to kill him to save his life. So check this out. I am the donkey.
Yeah.
And what I want to do is I want to share a little dirt with you before we get into our questions.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. First and foremost, I grew up in a home with a raging alcoholic father.
Wow.
Okay. And when I say raging, I mean raging with a capital R. Okay. And what I mean by that is he raged from the time I was born until the time he died when I was 16.
Wow.
Now, what did that mean for a little boy? That meant that as I grew up, anytime I got caught up in recreation and doing what I had to do during the day, something would always sneak up behind me and tap me on the shoulder.
Wow.
And they would say, you know, listen, don't be so happy, buddy, because you got to go home to the alcoholic father. All right.
Wow.
Second to that, I grew up in a home with poverty. We didn't have much money. You see what I'm saying? And what happened is both my parents worked full time. My dad was a bus driver. My mom was a housekeeper, but my dad's money went to drinking. And my mom ended up raising me and my 3 siblings just with a housekeeping salary.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying? So we didn't have much. But last but not least, I grew up in dysfunction. And the best way I can explain that is I remember my parents having these blowout arguments. And, you know, the next morning, my mom would just dress me and put me on a bus. Nobody would talk to me about what happened. We wouldn't debrief what happened. And so I grew up having to deal with these things, not having any type of counseling, and then just having it evolve in my life. But the silver lining to the story is the fact that that's what I use to motivate.
Wow.
Like I was able to endure that in my upbringing, but I was able to come through it. And the catalyst for me to push to help other people is based on the fact that my scars give me that energy to want to connect and help people to get to a place of peace for themselves.
Wow. That's so powerful. I just have so much respect for your journey. I can't imagine how confusing and challenging that was. And so what would you say that have been the most important elements of you being able to feel inspired and encouraged despite that dirt, as you say?
You know, what I was able to do, and it's something that I teach, is perspective. You know what I'm saying? And so what I was able to do is I created this world, you know what I'm saying, that was functional. So I had the dysfunction, but I created the world of functional. So what I did is my coaches became my father figures. You know what I'm saying? My coaches became my father figures. My teammates became my brothers and sisters in a functional home. And the accolades that I got, I was blessed to be a phenomenal athlete. So the accolades that I got from being able to perform well on the sport field became the positive reinforcement that you would get in the home. And that became my protective bubble as I went through this process of living in this home with all this dirt.
Wow, that is so inspiring, and that really speaks to something that I teach people, that we all need role models. And that level of resourcefulness that you had even as a kid is really astounding. That some part of you knew that if you got a positive role model from your coaches and your teachers and your peers, that you could take in those needs that weren't getting met at home. That is an incredible amount of resourcefulness and such an inspiration to other people.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. It's called survival. You know what
Mhm.
I'm saying? And I think what happens is your instincts kick in. And I did what I felt was right in the sense of keeping myself from being buried by the dirt.
Yeah, exactly. It just requires a huge amount of, um, you know, vision about what you're moving towards, which I'm sure is what you teach people now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, if you don't have a vision, you don't have a path.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? So I think that my upbringing created this environment that I picture things, and then once I picture it, I create a system to get there. So when I teach that to other people, I teach them to again find a fresh perspective, um, and then find a way to line it up and take small steps in the direction of whichever way they want to go to reach their goals.
Yes, and that really is the ticket. I think that's what all coaching is about, is helping people find their vision and then breaking it down into, small digestible steps to get there. And I want to ask you more about that. I just want to reflect back to you, though, that so many people who come from adversity, any kind of adversity, instead of being able to have the resilience and the creativity to create a vision, instead they just suppress the feelings, and they go through the motions. And I'm sure that you encounter a lot of people like that you work with. And so when somebody is just like making themselves busy, or whatever other ways of distracting themselves from their feelings that they have, and they're not in touch with their vision, what do you do to get them in touch with that vision? Because I do think that's what you need in order to rise up out of it.
I kind of manipulate them. Check this out. So what I do is fear. I explain to them that fear is paralyzing, right?
Right,
So
totally.
fear is paralyzing. So I say to them, envision getting up in the morning, um, get ready to put on your shoes to go and attack this vision, but deciding that you're going to get back into bed and not go. And I explained to them that when they don't overcome the fear, there's people that are waiting for them to put on their shoes to
Right.
go accomplish their goal so that they're
Hmm.
able to step forward to get their prize. So when you decide not to do it for yourself, not
Right.
only are you accountable to you, there's other people that's in the path of your success that's waiting for you to make that first step.
That's so beautiful. I don't even see that as a manipulation. I see that as, I mean, I have goosebumps hearing it, because the interconnectedness, that we all have. It's like we can get so, self-centered and think like, oh, well, nobody's really going to care if I don't do it. But no, we all have a purpose, and we all have, a mission that depends on other people, where whether it's a romantic relationship, or whether it's a family, or whether it's an organization, we're all interconnected. And that's such a beautiful way of motivating people, is saying, not just for you, but what are the consequences to others if you don't do, what's in your vision. And that inspires everyone, that lifts everybody up. That's beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, definitely.
Yeah. And so tell me more about, how it is that, yeah, I know you work with groups, you work with kids, you work with adults. what are the main ways that you get people in touch with their vision and to get past their prejudices, which I know is a lot of what our society is, society's work is right now, and individual
Right.
work.
So what I do is with the youth, I created a youth development program. And the name of the program is called Power of Peace. And I'm going to explain what I do in the program. But as I explain what I do in the program, the same thought process is what I use with my individual clients as well. What I do is, if you can envision yourself being a principal, I come to your school and I ask for a cross section of students. So I want my room, I want 20 students in total. I want my room to be compiled of every race. So I want all races. I want an athlete. I want an honor roll student to make up my group of 20. Now, once I get that group of 20 in my room, I do everything in a circle. And I'm with high school students, it's 2 days, middle school students is 1 day. But I run them through interactive activities that give them the ability to self-reflect on the individual level, but then they get to communicate and interact with students that they would not normally interact with on a regular day at school. And so it starts out real mild. You know, one of the first icebreakers or activities I do is I have them pick an adjective name that goes with the first letter of their name that describes their personality. So we want to have them step out of that face
Yeah.
and step into the name for the time period that we're together. And then I start to create these activities that start to bring the group together. So one of the activities that I think is magnificent, especially when we talk about race relation, is an activity I do, and I call it concentric circles. And what I do is imagine the group now split in half. So you got half on the inside circle and the other half on an outside circle. I give them 5 questions, and they're going to speak to 5 different people, and I'm going to rotate them 5 times. The first question is a person or people you respect and why you respect them. The second question is qualities that you look for in a friend and why. The third question is, if you had the power to change something in the world, what would it be and why? The fourth question is a time that you felt most hurt by someone that you trusted. And the fifth question is a time that you lost someone that you really cared about. So imagine we're doing this, they're rotating and they're talking to the other participants, but rewind and remember, it's a cross section. These are kids that never, ever really, they met each other, but they've never socialized on this level. So I want you to envision this happening. And then when I pull them out to my big circle, Valerie, after this activity, and it's done like mid-morning, so we've done some other little things beforehand, but just imagine when I pull them out to the full circle, I just stop the group and I say, do you feel that? Valerie, the whole room shifts.
Yeah.
And check this out, the reason why it shifts is because when they come into the room and they sit in the circle and they look around, everybody's just a face.
Yes.
After doing the activity, all those faces now turn into people.
Mm-hmm.
And the energy totally changes. And from that point forward, I just continue to layer activity after activity. I mean, if you want, I can go into others, but these activities are married to each other, where after the 2-day period, there's an ultimate ending where the group comes together, they get insight on themselves, and then they move forward, because schools bring me in to do multiple groups because I'm trying to change the climate of what's going on in their building. But that's a snapshot of what I try to teach in my groups.
Yes, that's so powerful. I feel like that is the macrocosm for the microcosm. I mean, the microcosm for the macrocosm,
Right.
that like when we really connect on a deep level about our feelings, our values, what makes us human, then we really see that everybody deep down is human, and we all have human needs, and we all have positive and negative personality traits, and we're just people.
Yeah.
Despite, and it's not just about race, it's about economic background, social status, class. With kids, it's about grades, right? And it's just so inspiring to get past all that stuff, and then to recognize this person has feelings and needs, and we share some values and things that are important to us, and we're more alike than we are different.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what they take from it. You can, and I can even get two teenagers that have been going to school with each other since kindergarten and actually come out of this experience and look at each other like, yo, like I feel such a deeper connection to you after going through this experience. I think that the missing ingredient, and you talked about relationship, and relationships in general, is transparency.
Yep.
You see what I'm saying? Once you feel vulnerable enough to be transparent with another individual, it takes the relationship to a whole nother level.
Completely.
You see what I'm saying? Yeah. And once, especially when you recognize it on both sides, because for a person to be vulnerable means that they trust you. And then by trusting you, gives you or puts you in a position to say, wow, they must really value me.
Yes, exactly.
You know what I'm saying? And so, what happens in this room is, these kids, and believe it or not, I do what I just explained to you, I do with adults as well. So my material is not youth-based.
Right.
It's human-based.
Yeah, I mean,
So
unfortunately, I think a lot of adults haven't asked themselves those questions.
yeah, no, they do, and when George Floyd first was murdered, I did a video on Facebook, and I woke up one morning, I hadn't shaved, and I just wanted to get my message out, and I explained that activity, and what I was trying to tell the people in the world is exactly what we just said: is listen, we are just people.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? We're not a skin color, we're just people. And if we treat people like people rather than treating them as faces, it would change the environment and the way that we interact with each other in society as a whole.
Absolutely. And, I'm glad that you brought that up, because I do think that it's important for everybody to, it's a paradox. And I want to ask you if you agree that, absolutely. It's like, I don't, when I look at a person, I'm just curious about their values, who they are as a person, what qualities they have, what's their vision, and I just want to connect. And of course, that's what I teach people to do. And yet I think it is really important to educate ourselves about the history of oppression, that like we're not in a vacuum. And the like, not just with race, but with class, and with any kind of prejudice that we have, it's important to overcome our biases, and to see the oppression and to speak out against oppression of any particular group of people, whether it's race, whether it's class, whether it's people having a certain type of personality and an extrovert rather than an introvert, right?
Yeah.
Or like people value masculine energy in our culture more than feminine energy. I mean, there's just so many prejudices and biases that we have. And I think, if you just look at like, well, this is just a person, and you discount the history of oppression. I mean, I do as much as I can to educate myself, but I'm humble about it. I just want to know what I can learn to have compassion. And so is there anything that you teach about the history of oppression that really helps to help people overcome their biases and really get past what's on the surface and see people as people?
Well, I'm a living example. I'm a Black man in America.
Yeah.
So to teach them, I just talk about my life experiences. So when I'm conducting myself in a workshop, the best tool that I use is my life experiences and I intertwine it in each of the lessons that I teach. So we go into stereotypes, we go into labels, and so I pull back the curtain on some of the adversities and challenges that I've had to deal with being a Black man in America. I was invited on a lot of podcasts right after George Floyd's death, and a lot of the podcasters wanted to get into what could they do to get out to their audiences to help. And some were, white Caucasian podcasters. And I say that because sometimes it was funny, sometimes when the conversation got real, there was a few where we almost had to hit the recording and be like, listen, if you don't want to continue to hear the truth, then we can't have this conversation. It made them feel uncomfortable.
Right.
When I was able to just kind of pull back the curtain. But, you said it. I think that, people say, how do I sit down and talk to a person that's been oppressed? I think the best thing you can do, when you see the protest, and then you see some of the anger, people, if they're not knowledgeable, don't understand that anger is based on some historic things that happened years and years and years ago. So to read, I don't teach this, but I advise that is to read and get a basis,
right,
of where some of that hate is coming from.
exactly.
You know what I'm saying? When you see the rage sometimes get connected to the immediate, but that rage is connected to a compilation of things that have happened over history, that makes people like that. I'll tell you this. I was reading an article on Facebook, and it was an honor roll history teacher who was dispelling the Confederacy. So what he would do is he would write something that the Confederacy stood for, and I think it was during Black History Month, and then he would do a Black innovator on the side of it. So he went down this path, and I'm 53 and I'm reading it, Valerie, right? So when I get to the bottom of the article, I got a tear, and it drops out of my eye. And you know what I realized is that in school, all I was taught was that I was a free slave.
Mm-hmm.
They gave me a little Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks on Black History Month, and schools never taught me anything more than that.
Exactly.
And so what it made me think about is I'm in front of many young people of color, and I've never took it upon myself to make sure now, since reading that article, that I allow young people of color and minorities to know that they're kings and queens as well.
Right, exactly.
They're not only descendants of slaves.
Of
You know what I'm
course.
saying?
There's
And
such a rich cultural history, not just of oppression, but of empowerment from, indigenous communities and culture.
yeah,
What's the history that we all come from?
yeah, definitely. You know what I'm saying? So, that's what I use as a tool to help bring people along.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I think that also is a microcosm for a macrocosm, meaning that, and that's the paradox, and I do consider myself humble. I mean, please, people that are watching, let me know ways that I could be less biased and more educate myself, and point out my own blind spots. But in my understanding, the paradox is seeing everybody as a person, without having any biases, and just getting to know you as a unique individual. And at the same time, having compassion that if you're angry, it's not just, and I mean, with you, I know you share your horrible modeling from your parents, and, the horrible wounds that you had, but it's not just your parents. I'm in a 2-year training called Hakomi, which is about emotional healing from the past. And, in the past, a lot of the Hakomi was just about, okay, your wounds come from your parents. I'm not saying that like this is what they thought, but like they've had to really expand through the education of and the shedding light on oppression, not just in the US, but throughout the world, of like race and class and value systems and all that, your wounds don't just come from your parents, they come from culture.
Yes.
And the way that culture has a bias against, you're not okay because, you know, you might learn that from your parents. Like, unfortunately, your dad wasn't able to allow you to be happier than he was, and that's horrible. But it also can come from culture, and, you know, you're Black, so you don't have the right to X, Y, and Z. And of course, people are going to be angry,
Right.
you know, because of years of oppression. And what that needs is compassion and understanding. And like I said, I'm, you know, educating myself all the time, and I don't consider myself an expert by any means. But I think that's the macrocosm for the microcosm, because I keep on getting the order wrong. Because you know, it applies to all types of relationships. You know, I teach with romantic relationships, people have triggers. And the
Yep.
trigger, you know, like, let's say, you know, one of my triggers with my husband is that, um, you know, if I'm misunderstood, I just get really triggered, you know, because I
Yeah.
didn't feel like I was understood. I'm different than a lot of people values wise, and it was understood always by people growing up. And so it's a trigger for me. And if he just saw that as being like, well, what's the big deal about being misunderstood? I mean, we'll work through it, right? Like, I'll understand
Yeah.
you. But if he doesn't understand my history around that and my past wounding around that with compassion, then he can't have compassion for why that's a trigger for me. And compassion is what creates connection, that creates understanding, that creates healing, you know. And so that's what I see you modeling, not just in your classroom, but, you know, in the world at large.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. I agree. You know what I'm saying? And when you talk about triggers and being able to identify them, that's back to the transparency. You know,
Right.
you being and when you're able to communicate it so that it doesn't have to be the secret, or it becomes passive aggressive, or what is going on, and I can't figure it out.
Right. Yeah. It's always about curiosity and going deeper, and like, everybody's, you know, emotions make sense when you
Yes.
understand it from their history and their values and their beliefs. Um, and so what tips and tools do you have for anybody watching? Like, let's say they had, you know, any kind of traumatic past or adversity in their past, and they know that they created a limiting belief out of it. Let's say that, like, they don't matter, or, you know, that they don't belong or something like that. How do you help people overcome that?
What I do is, I feel like we step on landmines um, that don't blow us up but cause damage. And so what I like people to do, and the activities that I do, um, forces a person to go back, retrace their steps, and find their landmines. So when they find their landmines, I want them to make sense of them, because what they'll find is that they make decisions in real time based on that thing that happened in the past. One of
Mm.
the things I do with them is an activity I call Who Am I? And I have them write down 10 words that mean a lot, that describe who they are, both good and bad. And once they write them down, I have them prioritize the 10 words. And then I have them stack them on their hand. And then I run them through a script for each word. And my script is just having them identify the word, place it in their lives, and how it has reacted or had them react in their lives. And then after each word, I have them crumble it up and drop it. And then at the end of the 10, all of out of your hand, I have them pick up the ones they want. And then the ones they don't want, they leave crumbled up. And we start to talk about what is valuable to you. You
Mm.
see what I'm saying? We have a tendency to spend a lot of time in places that don't bring us value. You see what I'm saying? So I have them separated and find, okay, these are the words that I value. These are the words I chose not to pick up. If it's not something like depression or anxiety that you're born with, if it's a behavior or something of that nature, it's now a opportunity to take the steps to eliminate it, from their lives so that they can feel lighter and feel better able to move forward to accomplishing what they have put in their paths.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is that like you have people talk about or put down what they don't want and then focus on the behaviors and the skills and the attitudes that they want to cultivate. And
Exactly.
like
Exactly.
then
Yeah.
fleshing that out. What would that look like if you did that? And what would be the impact of that? And what would you need to believe in order to take that action? Right. And like, then you focus on what people want rather than what they don't want.
Yeah, and not only that, what people miss is that when you keep a hold of that thing you don't want, how heavy it is.
Yes.
So crumbling it up and getting rid of it in an activity, sometimes the feedback I get is, Mike, it was easier to write it on a paper and just drop it. What about in my life? And I explained to them, like, most programs that you go to, Alcohol Anonymous and whatever, the main objective is admitting who you are first.
Right.
So to be able to admit and put that on the paper is the first step to progress. Because until you actually verbalize and put it out, it's something that's hidden.
Right, exactly. Like what you resist persists is what I like to say.
Yeah,
definitely. What you really look at, and I think it's also important to acknowledge the, how that wasn't your fault that you, like we have adversity and it wasn't your fault that when you were 5, you made it mean that you don't belong or you don't matter because of what was going on. But to understand that that isn't who you are. It's just a decision you made that made sense at the time, right? But like now you can choose something else.
Yeah, definitely. I agree.
So I think, as coaches, we both help people focus on their future and make goals for their future. And then I think the most important element, which is so great that you work with groups and you do workshops, is the accountability, right? Like if you know that you're going to have to talk to somebody about, did you take actions towards your vision and to cultivate the qualities that you want, then you're just like you said, like if you don't do that thing, someone's counting on you, right? Like we all thrive in relationship and community, with support. And so what are the types of ways that you support people in cultivating that vision and becoming who they want to be?
What you do is sometimes you have to make them accountable to you. You know what I'm saying? And so just being able to have them check in, and not only check in is when you talk about the small steps, I think people get overwhelmed when they create a vision and they try to swallow it up at once.
Right.
And so, to continually emphasize the baby steps, rather than trying to go after it all at once, you know what I mean? And just being able to guide and help them as far as when they go through the process, you know what I mean?
Completely.
Definitely. That's what I strive for.
Completely, right? Because it's like we're coaches, and as a relationship coach, I can't imagine. I mean, obviously we can do a lot on our own. We're so resilient, but transformation is so much easier in relationship with a coach or a friend or, a group, that you're being supported and becoming who you want to be. And, I love working with people one-on-one. I know you do too. And then you also have groups. And so I'd love to hear more. I know you're doing a conference in August in Connecticut.
Right.
Like, how can people, if they resonate with what you're saying, how can they work with you and be supported by you?
What I do at my conference is I have people come in, and I do just like I've explained with the high school students, is I get a diverse group of people together, and we take that journey. We take that journey through interactive activities to go back and find those landmines and start to strategize their lives so that they can gain traction and direction moving forward. So, it's done over a weekend, so we can take our times and we don't rush, but it's based on gaining insight and gaining strategy off of their life experience using that as a manual. So, you know, that's the basis of using our story as a catalyst for the push.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
wonderful. And
Yes. Yes.
and so I'll provide a link for that conference below
Okay.
this. If you're watching the YouTube video, it'll be in the in the description, and if you're listening to the podcast, it'll be on the show notes. Who is the workshop for? Is it for adults? Is it for
It's adults, adults, you know what I mean? Young adults, it can mix, you know, the age, you know, 20 and up, you know what I'm saying? You don't want to bring them down too young, where
right,
that
right, right. Well,
lives, yeah, so
you
they're
have
not
enough
able to,
commonality. I mean,
yeah,
and also just like maturity level. But I think it would be really great to have a diverse age group as well.
yeah,
You know, because I
yeah.
think people have unconscious biases about age. I think, you
Oh
know,
yeah,
like so
different
great to get
realities.
past those. I mean, I've been socializing a lot in virtual reality, like with the headset, you know, this year because of COVID. And it's been an incredible tool to like meet people from like all kinds of ages, races, cultures, backgrounds, and you don't know because you're a cartoon,
Yeah,
right? And
yeah,
so it's like amazing to just get past, you know, I mean, I'm not even aware of what biases I have, but it's like I'll approach someone and they might be like a 16-year-old transgender person in, you know, Europe. And
yeah,
like, I don't know that. I just strike up a conversation with them. And I mean, I wouldn't have any biases anyway about transgender people or whatever. I consider myself unbiased. And like I said, I'm able to be pointed out my blind spots if you see them. But you know, it's so amazing to be in such a diverse group.
yeah,
And that's why I think, I mean, I just thrive on the one-on-one work because I like to spend 90 minutes going really deep with one person and helping them,
yeah,
you know, like heal their past wounds and create their vision. And I think that I want, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to interview you, because I think that people benefit so much from groups. And I know you thrive running groups, although you also work one-on-one. And I think groups are such an amazing way to see like everyone here's a mirror for you, you know,
yeah,
and pointing out to you like what are your subconscious limitations, limiting beliefs, biases that you can get past, you know, so that you can be a bigger version of who you are.
yeah. It's definitely a group dynamic. It's a lot different than the individual work. You're able to pull that, and you have different trees of fruit you could pick from.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
good
definitely.
analogy.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
um I love how much of a how much integrity you have, you know, how much you seem to walk your talk, and you know, just be a living example of how to overcome challenges in your life and thrive. And I know that you have a book about that too. It's called Be
yeah,
Encouraged, 250 days
yeah,
of motivation and encouragement. So let's hear more about that too.
yeah. I created that. I put posts on my Facebook page for inspiration for years, and a woman was dying of cancer. So she asked, can I put them in one place so that she can go and find them? So she inspired me. I went back on Facebook, pulled 250 of my favorites, put it into a book dedicated to her, and I put it out. And each page is built, like we said, perspective, so that you can read it before you start your day, and it just gives you some insight on being able to fly above the storm,
Mm.
rather than in the storm, and get a proper look at what's going on in your life.
Yes, I love that perspective. And I really do think that we all need each other, you know, to pull each other up and get that
Yeah,
perspective. And so your book
yeah,
sounds like a really good inspirational tool for people.
yes, definitely.
Yeah, so I'll put the link to the book below the video and in the show notes so that everybody can see that. And of course, I'll put your contact information there for people to get in touch with you. And this has just been such an inspiration, you know, because I feel like it's one thing to say that you can overcome adversity and thrive, and it's another thing to really be a model of that. And I feel like you are such a model of that for people. And you know, the more we speak out about our individual challenges that we've come past and how we've overcome them, the more we inspire others.
Yes, yes. My life is a living testament of it. And they can come find me on my Facebook page, Michael Arterberry, put it in the show notes.
Yep.
My website, michaelarterberry.com, Youth Voices Center. You can see my nonprofit, and you see the different areas where I use my life story as a catalyst for success.
Yeah, yeah. And I just feel so inspired, and I'll follow you on social media too. And I can't wait to hear people's comments. If you're listening, then feel free to go to my webpage. This interview will be hosted on coachvaleriegreen.com/podcast/Michael, because I just have everybody's last name. First name. And you can leave a comment on my webpage. If you're watching YouTube, I'd love to hear a comment below. What did you think about this video? What questions do you have for us? And feel free to share your own story of how you've overcome adversity, because I think every time we share our own stories, it inspires others. And let's, keep the conversation going. And so I'm just so grateful that we've had this chance, and I look forward to staying connected.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity, Val.
Yes, and I hope everyone has a day filled with inspiration.
There you go. I love it.